Hello and welcome to another episode of the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. Make sure you follow OTG on Twitter at OTGBasketball. Also hit that subscribe button. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me as always, my guy, Kory Waldron, and our guest today, Jack Manuell. What's up, Jack?
It's over a quarter way through the season. Time flies when you're having fun watching ball, doesn't it, fellas?
You know, they say this is the most wonderful time of the year because of Christmas, but it's really just because I have more time to watch basketball.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of good games, too, and we obviously are going to have our Christmas Day game, so should be really exciting. Also, a quick shout-out to Jack and Kory, hosts of a couple other OTG pods. Kory does Full Access Hoops. Jack does the JBT pod. He also does Brooklyn Buzz with me, so check out those pods. But let's get started today, and we're going to talk about you guys are talking about great season, exciting, happiness, all that. We're going to talk negative to start the pod, and we're going to talk OKC. This is a team that people had going to the season after acquiring Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and then some guys off the bench like Patrick Patterson, Raymond Felton that could possibly compete with a Golden State Warriors team. And right now they have looked terrible. What are your initial thoughts on OKC and their struggles? What's wrong with this team? Can they get better?
Offense. We say that the key to a good offense is a good defense, but for the Thunder, it's the complete opposite. We seem to harp on it quite a bit, but they're terrible from the field. They're 27th in field goal percentage. They're 28th in 3-point percentage. Their offensive rating is in the bottom 10. But on the flip side, their defense is top 2. They can't seem to get any cohesion with Russell Westbrook and Melo. When those two guys are out on the floor and Paul George isn't, I think they're like a negative in possessions. When it comes to like Russ and PG on the floor at the same time, they're like plus 12 in per 100 possessions. One thing that Russ and Melo are they're both very stubborn in the way they play basketball. They're not very open and like flexible. You compare it to say a Miami Heat with the big three. Chris Bosh was so malleable in his role, and I'm stealing here a little bit from Zach Lowe and his pod. But the comparison with Kevin Love and Chris Bosh as those third guys, obviously Kyrie's gone now, but both of those guys were able to happily take a back seat. Even Dwayne Wade right now, you guys have mentioned how much better he's been in the earlier outlets. And he realized early on, look, okay, maybe I shouldn't be starting here. And he bit the bullet for himself. But Melo is continuing to be very, very stubborn, despite the fact that their depth is something that is another real weakness. They need him, whether it's make a trade, whether it's make a lineup change. I just think that in terms of their rotation as well, their coaching, I'm not putting it all on Billy because I think it's hard to get through to these two guys who are as tough as a wall when it comes to cracking. But yeah, there's lots of problems. But I think if Russ and Melo can actually let go of the ego a little bit, then maybe things will change. But, Kanye and Jay are still having feuding problems. So if they are, then I think there's no hope for Russ and Melo.
I mean, watching them last night when they were down, I think 34-19 at one point to start against the Grizzlies, you're kind of scratching your head. I know myself personally, I had huge expectations. I didn't think they were better than the Rockets or the Warriors, but I thought they were going to be like a lock for a 3 seed and probably battle with San Antonio for that 4-3 seed. And like you said, Jack, they have one of the best defenses in the league still by defensive rating, but it's not really going towards wins. I mean, last night they had to fight for an overtime win in a game where Westbrook and Melo offensively were horrid. Thankfully, Steven Adams has been one of the most consistent players for them. I think he already has a career high in double-doubles at this point or something like that. He already has 7. Alex Brines has been solid. Patrick Patterson, I mean, that guy is a wreck.
Yeah, rough.
My Lord. Anytime he's taken a shot, like I think that's a miss, like right off the rip. It doesn't even matter like how open he is or anything. There's just nothing in that shot. Their biggest issue is they got to add scoring. I thought about this last night while I was watching. A guy like Sean Kilpatrick would not be like a bad guy to look at if you're OKC.
Definitely.
Because they just need something off that bench unit for some more scoring. I mean, there's just not enough scoring. And if Melo and Westbrook are shooting, career low shooting percentages, I think Paul George is really close to his career low. If your 3 best players are shooting that poorly, granted, I do think they're going to come out of this slump. But, it wouldn't be a bad idea to add some kind of scoring punch alongside of them.
Yeah,
Piggybacking off that, Kory, sorry to jump in there. Kilpatrick is one guy that they can just pick off waivers. Because I was doing some research as well, looking at their like future draft picks. They don't own their own draft pick really, unless it's a 1 to 14, which it's unlikely to be this year or next year. So they're not going to have their own picks. They can't trade like say a first rounder for a Lou Will, who would be perfect for them. But a guy like a Sean Kilpatrick, who has had his struggles, but he knows how to get buckets. And another thing, they've really been terrible on the road. They're like 3-10 this year, so they're going to start winning some games when they're on the road trips, or else it's just going to pile up.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, something on the road is important. Like you said, they could pick up a Kilpatrick, but Jack, you and I have watched him plenty this season. He has not looked good. But if you guys had to give me, I want you guys to give me what is the biggest reason for their struggles? Is it the bench? Is it Carmelo Anthony? Is it Billy Donovan? Or is it the just overall chemistry of the big three not syncing together? You have to pick one. You can't say, oh, it's a little bit of everything, Jack.
No, for me, it's the chemistry between Melo and Russ. I think both of them, as I mentioned, are too stubborn in the way they played their game, whether it's Russ chasing a triple-double or whether it's Melo jab-stepping until the lights go off. I heard a really interesting stat. Zach Lowe, I think this was before the Grizzlies game, and I'm sure what happened last night. He had 0 screen assists or 0 screens for Carmelo Anthony. Both of them just like to ISO so much that it just influences so heavily on the offense. So, like, if those guys can't get any sort of flow, now I'm not saying they need to turn into the Golden State Warriors or, even the Brooklyn Nets who like make a million screens, off-ball screens, but even just some pick and roll action between the two, the 1 and 3 or the 1 and 4 if Melo's playing in the 4. Both of those guys can really, really influence each other's games in a positive way. And Melo doesn't necessarily need to go to the bench, but he needs to stop taking ISO shots. And Russ needs to, start getting a bit more efficient because, he's getting plenty of triple doubles this year. But I don't think anyone really cares as much as last year.
You guys want to know a fun stat from last night?
I do.
Between Westbrook and Carmelo, they were 14 for 40 shooting.
That's
14
rough.
for 40, gentlemen. Melo was 2 for 6 from 3. Russell Westbrook was 1 for 12 from 3.
Oh.
But he got that triple-double. Right?
Yeah, he's shooting 24% from 3 like this month. Like, I'm not sure what gives. Why does he think he's he's not Steph Curry, he's not Alan Crabb, he's not Kyle Korver. He seems to think that he's a pull-up king. Like, I would say, our boy Nick Spencer Dinwiddie is a better pull-up 3 than Russ.
And Russ's 3-point pull-up 3 game is bad, and he shoots it way too much. And I was going to tweet about it the other night when they're playing the Nets, but I was like, I'm going to tweet this. He's going to hit 3 straight. But I watched him again a little bit in Memphis last night. It's like Russ. I think he's banged up. I saw some OKC people talking about this and the knee procedures he had. I think there's something wrong with him because he's not that explosive. I know I didn't watch as much of the Grizzly game, but I watched obviously the whole Nets and OKC game. And he wasn't really able to attack the Nets inside. And considering they had Tyler Zeller and rookie Jared Allen inside and Westbrook was pretty quiet. He dropped 30, but it wasn't he wasn't dominating inside and OKC lost that game. So I think there might be something wrong with him. But I agree with you, Jack. I think the chemistry is a major issue. They're just not syncing, and I think some of that falls on the coach. Kory and I were big on Billy Donovan going into the season, but I think he has to be like, guys, we're running this system. Stop with this ISO bullshit. Stop with these bad threes. We're taking a ton of bad shots. We have so much offensive talent. Obviously, they do have spacing issues playing Roberson and Steven Adams, but having 3 talented players like a Carmelo, a Westbrook, and Paul George, there should be something you can do to make them all kind of click in the right system. And like you said, some of that is Westbrook changing his game. Some of that is Carmelo not, jab stepping 600 times. If I could say Paul George is probably playing the best out of the big 3.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think he's had the biggest impact defensively too, which kind of helps Paul George.
He's been great. I don't know if he still is leading in steals, right?
I don't know if he's leading, but he's definitely in the top 5. Someone might have passed him since he's missed 2 games. But I know he was top 5 for a while. So yeah, I agree that he's definitely been probably their most consistent player. But back to your original question, I think the fault of this team so far is just chemistry. It really, to me, reminds me of the Pacers last year. And it's funny, it's Paul George again. They got all those new pieces. And, on paper, you see a team that can win, 45 to 55 games. And there's just like there's not enough effort every night. I mean, like for me, Paul George has not shown the same effort on a gamely basis for the Thunder so far this season. Westbrook, I just think I definitely agree with what you said, Nick, about him possibly having an injury, because he definitely does not look as explosive as he has compared to last year. But he doesn't look comfortable within his own. Like, this is Westbrook's team, but he doesn't look comfortable. Like he against the Memphis Grizzlies last night, there was a possession. Westbrook carries up the ball, and he's sitting at the 3-point line. He dribbles for about 10 seconds. He passes it to Melo. Melo dribbles for about 6 seconds, passes it back to Westbrook for the last, 4 seconds of the shot clock, and Westbrook heaves it, and it's a terrible miss. And I'm just thinking, what kind of possession? No, there's 3 players on the court just standing there watching Melo and Westbrook try to ISO a player. And, that's just not good basketball. And like you said about Billy Donovan, I'm not sure if he's just letting the superstars hijack his system, or if maybe he just doesn't have a system. Because I know, being a Florida Gator fan, I've seen sets and him running plays for the Gators, which has made them be a very successful collegiate team. And I just don't see any of that right now at the pro level.
And I think one thing, like you mentioned with the chemistry and what Russ and Melo are doing with the ISO situations, when you have 2 players like a Steven Adams and Andre Roberson on the floor where you don't have to respect their jump shot, that's another help defender. That's making life a lot more difficult. And like we said, Russ isn't even a good 3-point shooter consistently. Melo's not lights out this season. So I think 3-point shooting is a major issue. And just like you said, what the sets, you're not taking advantage of Adams, who's probably one of the best screen setters in the NBA. You need to keep Roberson busy. You need to have motion in the offense. When you have guys that can't hit jumpers, they need to be moving. If you have Roberson stand in the corner and no one's respecting someone who's shooting 20% from 3, so, you need to figure things out. And like you said, Kory, do we know if it's Billy Donovan not running his system, or is it just, the stars taking over the team? So I think OKC has some major issues. Do you think this team could benefit from Melo coming off the bench, or no?
I do. I personally, I think Jeremy Grant and Alex Abrinas could provide, enough of what Melo can. In terms of offense, they don't compare. Abrinas is quite a good 3-point shooter. He was good last night against the Grizzlies. But I like the versatility. Patrick Patterson, as we mentioned, being such a lump and such almost unplayable. And Andre Roberson as well. His defensive capabilities are unheard. He's one of the best one-on-one defenders in the game. But there's just not enough versatility on this roster, not enough depth on this roster. And actually, I remember you guys mentioning on the Westbrook injury, there was a rumor going around that he had a hip contusion, and there was rumors that he was going to be out for a couple of weeks. And then I saw that just disappear. And I think it was I can't remember if it was an OKC beat writer or if it was one of these podcasts that I listened to. But I'm with you guys. I don't think he's healthy, but they can't afford for him to be injured. You're going to have Raymond Felton playing 30 minutes a night? Really?
Shout out to Felton, though. He's probably been their best bench player.
He's been good.
Yeah.
How's that dad bod?
Thank you. I like the shout out. #dadbod.
Yeah, so OKC, there's a lot of issues. Obviously, still a lot of season left and a lot of talent. But I think, like you said, Jack, the depth and the overall spacing of the team. When I checked yesterday before the Memphis game, I believe they only had 2 guys that get rotation minutes that were shooting over 34% from 3, which obviously we know spacing is one of the most important things in the NBA right now. Now I'm going to ask you a question about Westbrook, and not to hate on him, but we've seen a lot of guys that were on OKC last year, Kory's boy Victor Oladipo, Sabonis, Doug McDermott, having nice seasons and really looking a lot better than they did last season. How much do you think they're succeeding because they're not playing with Westbrook, or is it just because they took a jump in their game, or a little bit of both?
I don't think it's anything to do with Russ, to be honest. I think it's more to do with the fact where they are now. Where he is in Indiana right now, Victor Oladipo. He showed signs last year. He wasn't horrible. He was still an average to good NBA player. Sabonis didn't get a chance to show up because Adams was in the rotation. I just think in terms of Russell Westbrook, I think his own play has dropped, and I don't think right now he's even a top 10 player in the NBA if we're ranking purely off form and at this around the quarter mark of the season. That's not really probably the hottest take ever, but I just don't think he's that great. But I think these guys just have some natural maturity in the game, and their environment that they're in is promoting what their skill level is. Victor Oladipo is allowed to have like a higher usage rate. Sabonis is able to have a nice little tandem with Miles Turner, and Doug McBuckets can actually shoot some threes, and with some better spacing out in New York because they've got a guy who's a unicorn who is just outstanding. So I'm going to back Russ in this one, just personally.
Yeah, I think too much is made of Russ held them back. Sabonis was a rookie last year. Rookies, we know, they're up and down their first year, and I don't think Billy Donovan, because of what he had, really wanted to rely on a rookie that much with Sabonis. Victor Oladipo still had decent numbers last year, and obviously this year. Personally, I think Victor Oladipo learned a lot from Russell Westbrook last year. I think he learned how to be a leader, watching Westbrook go out there and do what Westbrook did every night. I see Victor Oladipo do a lot of pull-up jumpers. He never was a pull-up jumper shooter. Like he'll drive and stop at the free throw line for a pull-up jumper. That's Russell Westbrook to a T. I think he really learned a lot from Westbrook, and I think if anything, Oladipo is the player he is today because he got to play with a guy like Westbrook. It was the first time Oladipo got to play with a guy who was clearly better than him and clearly a superstar in this league, and I think that was extremely beneficial for Oladipo. Because now I think Oladipo learned how to win, like how to lead a team and win from Westbrook. And then Doug McDermott, you're on the Knicks. The Knicks, besides Porzingis, are kind of questionable. I know Courtney Lee's been solid, but he's definitely earned some solid minutes out there in a couple of big nights.
What about Kanter?
Oh, and Kanter, and Kanter, he's got the best defensive, right? He's one of the best rebounders right now in the league over there in New York. I actually was thinking about this last night. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was thinking how much the Thunder, although Kanter was a defensive liability, how much they miss his offensive punch off the bench and how they lack a backup center besides Adams.
Yeah, it's a fair call. Like Kanter has almost like in New York flourished due to like his personality and like the feuds he's been having with LeBron and such. But he's with the like offensive minded centers, him, Monroe, they're probably your two top notch guys. And we're hoping Okafor out in Brooklyn can turn into that. I'm sure we'll chat on that on the Brooklyn Buzz. But Kanter I think Kanter's always been who he is from Utah to New York. He's missed in OKC, as Kory said. I think he provides depth and just another body who can get buckets because they've got a lot of guys there that are almost like unplayable. So when you lose depth, it hurts because during the season, I think this is where Thunder are really going to struggle. But I think I mentioned this before. But in the playoffs, I think if they're 4 to 6 and they're able to get like a decent run and a decent a run at it, then I think they can still do some damage in the playoffs. But right now, they're barely even in there.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit on this. I think Westbrook did hold them back. I think you look at Oladipo, you look at a guy, you look at this OKC team last year, we look in the playoffs, we look at the late season. What do we all talk about? This team couldn't score, they couldn't play defense. Nobody on the team could score but Westbrook. But we've seen Oladipo in situations. Obviously, his game has improved, but there definitely were situations where Oladipo could have gotten more touches and benefited OKC. You probably could say the same thing about Kanter and getting McDermott involved more. Sabonis, I think he was just a rookie, and he wasn't really ready for the NBA. But I think Oladipo, they could have used him more last year because in that Houston series, they just couldn't have anybody on the floor that could put up points other than Westbrook. So I think to some extent, the way that team, I don't know if that's coaching or just Westbrook's style, but these guys weren't getting the touches and they weren't getting the ball in the situations for them to be successful as they are in these other situations. Some of it is minutes, some of it is touches, but some of it is, they could have done that last year because it's not like every possession Westbrook was taking, shots he was making were good possessions and his turnovers were high as well.
They definitely could have. To your point, Nick, there was surely a way to integrate Victor Oladipo to be more of a vocal point within the offense because they did just have Kevin Durant the year before, and Westbrook and Durant both got theirs. So if Oladipo was anything like he could have been last year,
even half of what he is this year,
right? But the one thing I can't say is I just don't think Victor Oladipo to a point was as confident last year. This offseason he won that like African MVP, whatever over there. And I don't know. I just think his confidence has grown a lot, because even watching him last year at the Thunder, he didn't look this confident. Even, I mean, yes, I guess that could have been because Westbrook, was a ball hog, but I just don't think he was fully developed yet in confidence wise.
You think Westbrook's teammates are scared of him to some extent? Like
I-
Oladipo was kind of scared to, take over a game and take bad shots because Westbrook, I mean, I even saw him last night. He yelled at Steven Adams for something he did defensively. And respectfully, Westbrook, your defense is trash, and you have no right to yell at Adams for anything he does on defense.
I think as a leader, that's where one way, I guess, a lot of people can probably call him out. He is known to be, for lack of a better term, a bit of a loner. He loves his tight-knit. He's got his tight-knit group within his family, his wife, and his brother and sister, and I think his brother, and just close friends. So outside of that, I think that's one thing that could benefit the OKC team. Going out for some team dinners, having some bonding sessions, going bowling, going to an arcade, going to the movie, see this new Star Wars movie, do something, because I think the fun is being taken out of basketball over there. And I think Melo is probably quite similar. Melo's probably got his dudes that he hangs out with, and Steven Adams. I think because Steven Adams and Enes Kanter last year, the Stash Bros were one of the greatest duos in the history of the NBA. No hyperbole there whatsoever. But there's no fun anymore with the Thunder, and I think they need to recapture that. And whether Billy Donovan's like, all right, we're all going to a team dinner at the Cheesecake Factory or something, just do something fun. Maybe they could just Russ could text Joel Embiid, hey dude, how do you have so much fun with this shit? Basketball's getting tough for me. They all just seem like they're really, really depressed. But you're getting paid to play the NBA, and it's pretty fun. So I think that's what they're going to get back. They're going to get a fun element to OKC. They need to put the fun in the Thunder. That was terrible. Please,
Yeah,
don't put that in the pod.
That was a really good
that
pun.
for sure, Jack. Go ahead,
That
Kory.
was great. I don't know what needs to happen. I'm surprised there hasn't been a team meeting yet, because we know how this goes in the NBA. A team struggles, and then we hear there was a players in OKC.
Yeah, I thought there was 10. I thought there was a mini one or something, but nothing the Cleveland one. I might have confused it with the Cleveland one.
Yeah, I remember the Cleveland one. I don't remember OKC though. It could have happened though. I don't follow them to the T.
Yeah, same with me. But if that's if they haven't had one, I think there's a need for one. I think there needs to be the fun thing needs to be addressed, because even last year they looked like they were having fun.
More celebration.
Westbrook and company.
Yeah, more celebration when Westbrook had big plays and stuff. Everybody was kind of pumped. Right now, you guys said, they look uptight and the fun's just not there.
You know who they need to bring back, guys? They need to bring back Cameron Payne. Bring back the Payne. Get some dancing happening.
That trade was a steal for them, really, because that ended up getting them Carmelo. I mean, I guess it depends on how you view the Carmelo thing. Still on Westbrook, though, before we move on to our next topic, do you think Westbrook makes his teammates better? Do you think that he's going to bring a guy to another level, or is Westbrook at his best when he's being his best and making himself the greatest player on the court and not as much about his teammates?
I think there needs to be a bit of both. We've looked at Adams' play. We've mentioned how good he's been. I think Russell Westbrook has made Steven Adams better this year. You probably can't really count many others. Last year, we were mentioning the whole fact that Victor Oladipo wasn't that great. We've seen a huge rise in his play. I think him and Melo need to work out how they can make each other better. I don't think it's all on Russ, despite the fact that yes, he's on the max contract. He's the franchise player. Melo's likely to opt in next year, so you've probably got another year with the dude. So I think they need to work out how to make each other better. Whether it's like I mentioned, through some pick and roll action, through some some of their own sets. I think that they would just benefit so much with some more motion offense. But I think Russ is at his best when he's doing both. He's getting a triple-double, but he gets it in the first half. It's a 10-10-10, and he's able to able to influence all over the court and not get a 30, 15, and 10 in the dying minutes of an OT game.
Yeah, I think Westbrook definitely doesn't make his teammates better. Which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Because I think Kobe Bryant was like that to a degree. I don't think Kobe really made his teammates a lot better. But Kobe was so great that, people were allowed to be. I mean, he also had Pau Gasol and guys who were great around him. But, Kobe was more about getting himself going and being great himself and then worrying about everybody else second to a degree. I think that's kind of what Westbrook is. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, it works. But it doesn't work when you have a guy like Melo who's a ball stopper, who needs the ball in his hands at least 20 times to take, 15 awful shots and then 5 wide open shots.
And then he'll hit the 5. He'll hit like 7 of the hard shots and miss all 5 of the easy ones.
Yeah. And then Paul George is whatever. I'm not really worried about him in this system still. I think he's fine because he plays all well. He's had some solid games for them. I mean, he was huge in that win over the Warriors, which let us, just point out, that's how good this team can be.
Yes.
Is what this team can be when they're firing on all cylinders. But the fact of the matter is we got that one time out of like the last 10 games, and there hasn't been anything to even been close to that kind of performance, which is typical Paul George to have to get up for like a big type game. And I'm sure Westbrook had more fire. I just don't think these guys are there's just something missing.
Yeah, the juice isn't there on a regular basis. I mean, not to talk about the Nets, but in the Nets OKC game, they just didn't have any juice in the second half, and they were getting outplayed by guys. The Nets are missing 2 of their best players in Jeremy Lin and D'Angelo Russell, and they have a ton of guys banged up right now. Shorthanded, OKC can't win that game. They need that game, and they still can't pull it off in Mexico City, even though, Westbrook's getting an MVP chance and everything. So I think definitely have some issues, and they have time to fix it, though. And like you said, Kory, the potential is there. But what do we think about another team in the Eastern Conference, and that's the Charlotte Hornets? Hornets are really struggling. A lot of injuries on that. 9-16 playoff race, slowly falling out of that. Should the Hornets blow it up this season?
There was a meeting last night by the Charlotte Observer. I saw on Twitter. Michael Jordan had a players only meeting. No coaches. Obviously, Steve Clifford's off with some family issues, so they've got an interim coach with Silas right now. So I think that when you're a small market team and when you've got Kemba Walker, you shouldn't have to blow it up. Like, we can compare this to, say, the Clippers, who are banged up to no end with Blake Griffin and the rest, like Beverly and, Gallinari's now back. Teodosic is coming back soon. But the Hornets haven't suffered too bad from injury, apart from Batum. But Batum's play since he's gotten back has been pretty trash. And I think Kory's mentioned on his Twitter just the fact that his contract is just so lofty that it leaves them quite stretched in their ability to blow it up. Like, if you want to get rid of like a Batum and someone takes on that contract and you can get some picks, yeah, I'd by all means do that. But like, in terms of their personnel, Dwight's been pretty good this year. Now, I know you guys are Dwight haters, but I'm
No, I'm not.
Oh, come on. You guys gave him so much shit on all the preview pods or whatever when there was a mention of Dwight.
I said he was going to – no. I said he was going to have a good year.
I was hating a little bit hard, but I'll say this to defend myself. Are the Hornets winning right now? No. Is Dwight playing well? Yes, but the Hornets aren't. So there is a correlation.
There's a correlation, but there's a correlation as well in the fact that they aren't doing anything in transition defense. Like, that might be partly due to Dwight Howard, but that is effort. That's just pure effort. They're just not trying. They're not getting back and defending in sets. Like, when you lose by 11 points to a Lakers team that is by no means an offensive juggernaut. Yes, Ingram is improving. Lonzo can pass the ball pretty well, and Lopez is the known stalwart. I think that if they could blow it up, then they should. But I don't think that there's any real. They don't have the pieces or the tools or the elements that would be able to. And because you're in a small market as well, we can compare it to the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies at least have a Mike Conley and a Marc Gasol. You're not going to trade Kemba Walker, or else you're going to be like the Atlanta Hawks or Chicago Bulls. But Chicago are a big market team. So I think Michael Jordan is. We talked about stubbornness. I cannot see a Michael Jordan-led team blowing it up.
I'm on the fence with this because this team has been in this same place in the league for 4 years now.
Yeah.
Very average.
At least dating back to when they barely made the playoffs over the Paul George-less Pacers, like in 2014. They've been an 8 seed or they've been right outside the playoffs. They signed Batum to that huge contract. Batum has been hurt, so he's not back at 100% yet, really. But he hasn't been good, and even back then, I was kind of skeptical of giving him that much money because he's not like he's always been like a 14, 6, and like 4 kind of guy. Like, it's not like he's ever done anything, extremely well, but he's a good wing defender. And now, like you said,
too.
Jack, that contract, it's going to be tough to move that to a degree, at least at this point. And then, Kemba Walker is the only piece that you could probably keep on to, keep and be like, I can still build around Kemba because Kemba's not overly old yet. Kemba can still produce. Kemba's actually gotten better the older he gets.
He's been great.
Yeah, as long as he has the speed and the ability to create space with his step back, I'm not worried about Kemba. And I wouldn't get rid of Dwight Howard either. I really like Dwight Howard on this team. He's been solid. He looks rejuvenated. He's crossing people up. He's driving to the hoop. He's throwing it down hard. He's rebounding. He's blocking. Steve Clifford was with him back in his Orlando days, so I'm sure I'm sure he knows how to use Dwight, or at least thinks he can use Dwight in ways that Dwight will be more effective. And so far to this point, Dwight Howard has been their second best player. Jeremy Lamb has been really good, but there comes a point in time where even Michael Jordan has to say, this just isn't working. There's just something on this team. The nuclei of this team is not right. Whether that's trading Jeremy Lamb or Marvin Williams or MKG, who I think like Nick says in his favorite term, the spacing of the floor, MKG kills that. The guy can't shoot at all. And when you have a guy like that on the floor with a Dwight Howard who can't shoot, even though he's hit like he hit like a catch and shoot jumper the other night. And I was like, what the hell is this?
What's life?
But and Marvin Williams isn't like a consistent shooter. There's only like 2 guys on this team who are consistent, and I think that's when you need to blow it up. And when your bench unit is run by Michael Carter Williams Jr., you also need to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing?
Yeah, I think the question is like, should they blow it up? The answer is yes, for sure, because there's no way in hell you're looking at this team. They have 116 mil locked up this year, 115 next year. This roster is not good enough to probably be a top 4 seed in the East. So what are you gaining for? You have a couple young guys like Malik Monk. He'll probably be a pretty good player. Like Kemba's going to continue to get improved, but there's still a lot of issues with this team, and there's just a lot of money locked up. To give you an idea, Dwight 23 mil for 2 years. Batum still got 3 years on his contract at 22, 24, and 25. Marvin Williams 13, 14, and 15. Kid Gilchrist 13, 13, and a player option for the 3rd year. Zeller, who just got hurt, has 12, 13, 14, 15. That's actually not a bad contract. Kemba's probably their best contract at $12 million for 2 years, and Jeremy Lamb at $7 million for 2 years. But you have a lot of guys that you guys mentioned, inconsistent players, and I don't think you can move Batum. Batum is a salary dump at this point. He's a throw-in.
Yeah.
If you're moving Kemba, you're taking Batum as well. We need you to take him. Marvin Williams is an interesting guy because I think he could benefit maybe a contending team. But like Kory mentioned, inconsistent. MKG, maybe a young team wants to take a chance on him if they want to clear some salary. But I think if I'm looking at the Hornets, I don't see any situation where the core of this group is taking to a championship ever. And maybe Kemba's the guy I can keep, but really Kemba's the only guy on this roster that has a lot of value that can get you a good asset to kind of build around and maybe get a high pick in the draft and go full out tank mode. And then you kind of you got Malik Monk, who's definitely shown some nice things. I think I watched one of his games. He had a big game at MSG. Dwayne Bacon, he's shown a little bit. Frank the Tank, Kaminsky, he's kind of been I don't want to say a bust because he's still pretty young, but they're kind of probably smacking themselves in the back of the head for not taking all those picks in that trade offer back in the day in the draft.
Yeah, that's fair. And look, they've got all their picks as well, Nick. So if there is a year to do it with the draft tightening happening next year, this year is the year to do it. But in terms of blowing it up and getting rid of because right now they are third last, they're 13th, and the Hawks and the Bulls are under them. So if they're really wanting to, they can just almost keep going at this average rate. unless our Nets drop off a little bit or the Magic drop off even more. They're 9-16. The Nets are 10-15. The Magic are 11-17-12. If they want to blow it up, then I think that there is a reason to do it. But at the same time, there's so much made of like being either the best in the NBA or being the worst in the NBA. Like owners, I'm pretty sure don't think that way. They would think much more pragmatically in the sense that, look, this is a business to me. I need to think pragmatically. I need to sell tickets. There's nothing wrong with being a Memphis Grizzlies, despite the fact that they've lost like $40 million last year, I think it was, with TV rights and stuff. But then you need to weigh up all the benefits of like, okay, if I get rid of Kemba Walker here, what is this going to do to my franchise? What is this going to do to the city itself? There's so many things that need to be taken into context before, haphazardly blowing it up. Not saying that they shouldn't, but I think that there needs to be a very pragmatic approach taken to it.
And I don't say this in a mean way, but what type of reputation do the Hornets have? Like Kory said, 4 years hanging around the same spot, and there's no real push to be anything more. And I think MJ, if I was trying to convince MJ, I'd be like, man, like, you're all about the rings. You're all about being the best. You want a championship. This team, there is no way in the next 2 years where they are going to have an opportunity to have a deep playoff run.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see it happening. So I would think, like, I just always think big picture. And I just, obviously, like you said, NBA owners and teams don't necessarily look at being the best or the worst. But I think when you're just straight up mediocre, they're not even pretty good. Like, I would say the Hornets, if I had to describe a mediocre team for the last few years, I'd go with the Hornets. Because they're not bad. They play pretty good. And you're going to have to, like, play a decent game to beat them. But they're not scaring you in the playoffs. If you have a 7-game series, I think their best moment was probably that first-round series against the Heat, where I think they went 7 games. They had a chance to win it in 6, and they didn't. And that was kind of their shot to probably get in the second round. And now it's probably gone.
Yeah, and they got beat by aging Dwayne Wade that year. Dwayne Wade's last year in Miami. Was that year, I think, right?
Yeah, and that's when the guy in the purple shirt was talking mad shit to Dwayne Wade, and he got shit on.
Yeah. I think as well, if we're going to go all out with this, you could almost trade Kemba Walker because his game is like...
His contract is nice too.
His contract is really good. He's not going to age well, I don't think. He's quite reliant, like a lot of point guards. They're very reliant on their athleticism, and Kemba is one of those. So I don't think he's going to age well. So, 2 years' time, MJ's going to have to bite the bullet. Is it going to be, do I get rid of Kemba here? And, there's hard decisions that are going to have to be made out in Charlotte. I don't think many podcasts in the NBA around the circles right now are giving this much time to Charlotte, and I'm glad that we are because they deserve their time. And, it's a really interesting situation that they're in.
I mentioned this to Evan yesterday. He's an OTG writer, Evan Dial. He does a lot of our Hornets stuff. And I said, you think they should blow it up? And he said, yes. And I asked him, would you think of how about a package from Denver that would include like a Jamal Murray? Send Kemba to Denver, get them and take Batum's contract, maybe take on maybe a Wilson Chandler, and if they have any other expiring or bad contracts, and see if you can get a pick too. Then you get Murray, a nice piece to build around for the future. We don't really know what type of player Murray's in. He has that all-star potential, so it's already a nice building block to add with him, Malik Monk. And, you go into the draft, get another young piece. You're already, solid into your rebuild. Hey, maybe you keep Dwight around so you can be okay and have some type of, name presence, but I think the Hornets, for me personally, if I was in charge, I would go with the blow-up. Yeah,
look, and I like that deal a lot. I think, Jamal Murray's name has been mentioned in so many trade deals, in terms of, even the Grizzlies would think about, say, trading Conley for Murray because, in terms of the value that he has, he's an unknown commodity. And so, you're willing to take a flyer on him if you are one of those sort of teams, lower market teams that needs to. You're not going to really, get your superstar free agent. So you almost have to take a flyer on those guys in the draft and through trade. So I really like that. And if Charlotte, but again, this is MJ we're talking about. This is one of the most stubborn, not for a bad reason. He's one of the most successful, if not the most successful athlete in almost the history of sport. So it's going to be interesting to know what's going on in his head when he's not, hitting the links and, playing cards with all his mates.
Tell him to hit me on the celly. I got him.
MJ on the celly, nice. Get that hotline bling.
There you go, Jack. All right, before we get out of here, let's get a couple of hot takes, some early favorites for the awards. We'll work our way down. Early favorite for Coach of the Year.
I think this is a two-man race, or maybe a three-man race. If I'm ranking my top three right now, very quickly, Brad Stevens, Greg Popovich, and Mike D'Antoni.
What about you, Kory?
I got slightly different. I think be a toss-up between Mike D'Antoni, Brad Stevens, and then I would go with Terry Stotts in Portland.
Terry Stotts, yeah. Yeah, he's done a pretty good job because we weren't expecting much. But I think Stevens and obviously D'Antoni are the favorites. Both guys incorporating a ton of new pieces into their system. And we see a team like OKC who's trying to do that and they can't. So I like D'Antoni, I like Stevens. Shout out to our boy Kenny Atkinson. Obviously he won't win, but he's done a great job, coaching a team that hasn't had a ton of talent. And early favorite for most improved player. I know who Kory's picking on this.
I wonder. It's a hint. He sings R&B songs, and he's quite good at it.
In the shower.
Yeah.
In the basement locker.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Aaron Gordon. The most improved player, could go to someone like a Porzingis. It could go to someone like a Jaylen Brown. But if we're talking purely across their game, across their skill set, Aaron Gordon has improved the most in terms of skill set wise. So that's why I'm going and I'm taking a flyer on him. Now, this is 25 games into the season. By game 82, I could be, switching sides and going with Mr. Waldron. But for right now, Aaron Gordon has improved the most as a player overall.
So the Pacer fan in me says Victor Oladipo, shut up and don't at me. But the basketball person in me says I really like what Porzingis has done. I think Porzingis is maybe a front runner for most improved only because his numbers have jumped a lot exponentially from last year. And then I think Tyreke Evans is a really good storyline for most improved, especially with how he's dealt with injuries so far. Granted, we're a quarter of the way into the season, so there could be an injury on the horizon, knock on wood. But I think those three would be my top. The Pacer in me would go Victor Oladipo, and then the NBA in me would say probably Tyreke Evans.
See, I like Porzingis or Oladipo. Aaron Gordon, I want to see if his three-point shooting can stay up. To me, the Magic, I want to incorporate some winning into the most improved because obviously anybody can put up big numbers in a situation that's not great. Like the Magic obviously they're not winning. They started hot. I want to see if Aaron Gordon keep that three-point shooting up. Oladipo, I'll be honest, I 0% expected this from him. I didn't know that he could even do some of the stuff that he's doing right now. Obviously, I remember watching him as a rookie in Orlando, and this was early on in the season. He killed the Brooklyn Nets when they had KG and Paul Pierce, and he had a ton of and one finishes, and I was like, this kid's got some talent. Orlando was just kind of a mess. They didn't know what they were doing, so I think in Indiana he's really prospered, but I think I'm going to go with Kory with Porzingis because I think Porzingis is ascended to another level type of player. Where you look at the Knicks roster and going to the season, a lot of us had them as a bottom 5 team, and he's been able to kind of make everybody better and clean up and just be that guy in New York. Even for example, someone like Enes Kanter, who couldn't play in OKC because of his defense. You have somebody on the weak side like a Porzingis who's so athletic at 7 foot, he can make up for those mistakes. So I think Porzingis out of all those guys has the highest ceiling as well. Tyreke Evans is nice, but he's been a little inconsistent for me, and I think that he'll probably fall off as the season progresses, especially as Memphis kind of dwindles down.
I think in the defense of Aaron Gordon, just back up my boy, he's had the situation is basically the same in Orlando. With Porzingis, the circumstances have favored him so much. He's the number 1 guy now. He's probably top 3 still in usage percentage. Melo's gone. It's all hunky-dory for him. Instagram models are liking his posts. It's happy days out in New York for him. Same with Victor Oladipo. He's gone into a situation where there's no expectation, there's no pressure, flourish in a situation. Whereas Aaron Gordon is still with the dumpster fire that is the Orlando Magic. Yet he's been able to remain a constant factor. One against him is the fact that he's doing it in a contract year, and a lot of players tend to ball out in contract years. So I guess you could hold that against him. But I'm going to stick up for Mr. Gordon because he's got the potential to be a Blake Griffin light.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Gordon has improved. I just want to see if he's going to hold that up. I think the one thing for him that'll be make or break for how great of a player he is his 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
He's shooting well from the 3-point this year. He's shooting 40%. If he can maintain that, he's an extremely, effective player to have, and he's going to get a lot of money this summer. But if he dwindles back down, I think that'll impact him. But like you said, he's definitely in the hat too. I don't think that any of the guys we mentioned, I think all have a possibility. But Rookie of the Year.
I think it's pretty obvious. It's BS, and if you think it's anyone other than BS, then you're BSing. And for those who don't know, Ben Simmons, BS. It's obvious. But Donovan Mitchell has certainly been putting his name up, and if Ben Simmons has an injury, then Donovan Mitchell is certainly a name that is worthwhile. And the Coos is doing his thing, but it's got to be the Aussie Ben. Shout out to Altona. I shout out every time I mention him. I'm shouting out Altona. So Aussie Ben all the way.
Shout out to our own Ozzy and Jack right here.
I thought it was going to be Ben Simmons too, but then I realized Lonzo. No, I'm just kidding.
It's going to be LeVar Ball.
Yeah. I full-heartedly agree. Ben Simmons is our Rookie of the Year. Put that man already on like the Wikipedia page. You might as well just edit it right now and put his name in there. He's winning this award. I think the only race for Rookie of the Year is the race for second. It's one of those things, kind of like how we see the Warriors as like, they're first, and it's kind of like who wants to be second. It's kind of how the Rookie of the Year race is. I think Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum have been superb. Donovan Mitchell has been more, and me and Nick mentioned it on the last podcast, he's been fantastic. I mean, I thought he was going to be good coming out of college because he was just a pure shooter. I don't think any of us expected him to be, as of right now, because Rudy Gobert's still, dealing with that knee injury, the best player on Utah, arguably. And then you have Jason Tatum, who for a rookie, and the losing of Gordon Hayward who would have expected a 19-year-old in Boston, one of the biggest basketball cities on the planet, losing their big offseason acquisition in Gordon Hayward would get so much from a rookie who is 19 years old. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Ben Simmons, I think, is the lock, like Jack said, unless there's an injury. But Mitchell and Tatum, any other year, would win this award. They'd have a chance. Like Kory said, Mitchell's been amazing. I think I expect him to come in and be a nice player off the bench. We talked about him on the preview pod, but not at this level so quickly. And Tatum, he's 19 and he looks like he's like 26. His bag of tricks in terms of working players in the NBA right now is amazing, and I think he's shooting one of the highest percentages from three in the league. He's also just been super clutch and hitting big shots for Boston. I think that's, obviously Rookie of the Year is a little bit different, but I think one thing that, would help him in another situation where Ben Simmons didn't exist would be that he's on a winning team, he's on the best team, and he's putting in big numbers to help them win.
Yeah, and I think that's why Malcolm Brogdon almost won by default last year.
Yeah.
Any of the three guys we mentioned with Kuzma, Mitchell, and Tatum would have won it last year quite easily.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, Ben Simmons is looking – it's a great class regardless.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about Jason Tatum, I actually heard this from one of the latest episodes of the Celtics Express by Jesse Corwin. There was a soundbite from Brad Stevens talking about Jason Tatum, who had a big shot recently, I think, against the Pistons late in the game. And Stevens has said that when they've had Tatum in for the workout, Tatum was putting up shots and not missing. And he was like, when guys come in and they're shooting for you and whatever, there's some nights, Dave, you can just tell a player's really hot. And he goes, but with Tatum, he goes, you just saw it. He goes, you just knew this kid could score. Like, this kid had complete confidence in his shot, and he just made buckets after buckets. And I think that's when you're getting that kind of praise from your head coach and you're 19 years old, the sky is really the limit.
Yeah, honestly, the Boston is one of the most amazing situations in the NBA in the sense that they're set up to compete for a championship possibly right now and for the next 5 years as well with all the young pieces they have. But obviously the big talk, early favorite for MVP. There's pretty much two guys in my opinion.
I'd say Harden right now, but ask me in 10 games time, and if LeBron is still doing absolutely amazing things. It's almost like, I can't remember. I'm stealing a take here from someone, but it's like the Cavs automatically lost a few games and then got back on the bandwagon. LeBron starts guarding Porzingis and Griffin and playing some MVP defense. He's just doing it's outstanding, and I'll be doing a piece for OTG soon on the minutes that he's playing and whether Ty Lue needs to lessen that. But right now they need him out there, and he is doing some otherworldly things. And as is James Harden. Right now I'd have James Harden 1 and LeBron 2, but both of these guys are two of the most underappreciated superstars of the past decade, and we'll be actually chatting about both of them on the upcoming JBT pod. So Harden 1, LeBron 2. I think the race for third is probably the most interesting. Like, do you go Giannis, Kyrie, Steph, or KD? Not that it really matters. I'd probably go with KD right now. Maybe Giannis. It's just almost a toss of the coin. But no one really goes for third when you're running a race.
Yeah.
Third is the one with the hairy chest. I think that's the race I'd go for.
Second the best.
So
first is the worst. Haha, Ben Simmons.
Ooh.
So who's your favorite for MVP, Kory? Right now.
I mean, if you don't, it's kind of like the Ben Simmons argument. If you don't say James Harden, you're lying to yourself. I don't think you can't, especially after last night, watching that game against Portland. Those kind of games are the teams that the contender, like, all right, let me reword that. Last night's game against Portland are the kind of games that if you're truly a contender, you win those games. Like, it's just one of those, like, James Harden and Chris Paul took over that game later in the second half, and they really just pushed Houston to beat a night where Lillard and McCollum were both on fire. And, I mean, it was a great game. It was a truly enjoyable basketball game on a Saturday night. And I think James Harden, with the 48 points, and he does it all. He's leading the league, I think, in true shooting percentage, win shares, a bunch of those advanced stats I really don't give a crap about. But he's the man. If it wasn't him, I would say LeBron James. I think LeBron James will be right behind him. And if Harden maybe slips up or has a really bad stretch, I think LeBron will pass him. But right now it's James Harden's by a mile.
Yeah, it seems like this is a year for Harden to win. And I think record-wise, there's a solid possibility that the Rockets could walk away with maybe the best record in the NBA or the best record in the Western Conference. And I think that always bodes well for MVP candidates. I think the way he's playing, incorporating all these pieces, and like his team keeps changing. He gets Chris Paul. Everyone's like, oh, the Rockets are going to struggle. How are Harden and Paul going to work? Harden's doing great. And like you said, that game last night says a lot about not only the Rockets as a team, but as Harden. I think all of us want to see, all of us that actually like James Harden appreciate his game. We want to see him take that next level in the playoffs, and hopefully these clutch situations in the regular season can help him get to that level. But obviously LeBron, I would not be surprised in any way whatsoever if he decided, I want to win MVP, and he just turned it up another gear. And the Cavs are winning now, so it's a possibility. But that wraps it up for today. I got one quick question. How much has your confidence grown in Houston that they could beat Golden State in a 7-game series?
If we're going percentage, I'll go 10%. And it's growing by the game, by the way that they're playing. And their defense is the reason for me that is making me believe. They're a top 5 defensive team. They've got so much versatility that we've mentioned about OKC. They lack. They've got depth, despite the fact that D'Antoni likes to limit his players. I'm super, super hyped for when they meet again in January. And I'm even more hyped for when they're probably meeting the Western Conference Finals as well. I'm confident. I'm wary because Golden State are doing just whatever they want, and they're still probably one of the most historically great teams ever. And they'll turn it up when they want to, and they know. But they're definitely going to get a challenge out of James Harden, CP3, and D'Antoni's boys.
I think my confidence has definitely grown in them, first off. If I had to do a split between Warriors and Rockets making the finals, I'd probably say it's 65-35 right now.
I like it.
In favor of the Warriors. And I think the biggest thing for that is the fact that we knew the Rockets' offense was going to be historically great. I don't think anyone saw the defense being this good. The defense is what really stands out to me when you look at the Rockets. PJ Tucker was a fantastic ad. Abalamute was another fantastic ad. Just getting defense. And Ryan Anderson has been a lot better this year. I think, having another ball handler like Chris Paul has just been so awesome. What kind of team has two selfless playmakers on it who can also get buckets? There's not many. You generally get one guy who can do it all. These guys have two who can score and assist. Chris Paul, who everyone said defensively was slipping, hasn't really slipped so far since he's been back. And James Harden looks a lot more locked in. I think on ISO possessions when James Harden – run Ryan Anderson. It's funny. I have a Rockets fan in the house, so I learn stupid Rocket stats all the time.
Hey, it's a benefit.
Yeah, not that he's better at it, but Ryan Anderson – is I think like the top 3 ISO defender right now on the Rockets.
I heard that.
And when you see that, you're like, Ryan Anderson, really? And it just shows that everyone is just more locked in. I mean, I think this team as a whole believes they can beat the Warriors. I wholeheartedly believe that this team isn't scared of jack shit. They are ready for the Warriors. They are ready for the challenge. And it starts by having a guy like Harden, who is officially a top 5 superstar in this league. And if I had to say right now, he's better than Kawhi Leonard. I'd take James Harden over Kawhi Leonard any day of the week as of right now. And then you have Chris Paul, who has shown that he's probably a better point guard than Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I almost spot on what you said, Kory. I think the Rockets, the offseason acquisitions, the way they fit in, the Chris Paul, and I think one thing about the NBA in general that we're going to see is teams are going to go more so to having multiple playmakers on the floor, having more than one guy that can create for your team. And I think that's a trend where we're going. That's why I was pretty excited about the James Harden Chris Paul combo. And I would say, 65-70 with the Warriors, but the Rockets continue to improve, especially with their defensive ability. And Harden and Paul are going to have a super extra edge in the playoffs, both having their struggles and wanting to win so bad. But that wraps it up for today. Kory, Jack, great show. Thank you for hopping on. And as always, thank you everybody for listening. And you can always listen to the NBA Outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, and OTGBasketball.com. Also, make sure you check out the rest of our podcasts. We got the JBT Pod, Full Access Hoops, Brooklyn Buzz, Celtics Express, Shuttleworth Initiative, and a new pod coming soon, Players Watch.
It's a damn mouthful, and swallow.
Yeah.